reached out to me about your belief, which is awesome because I love talking about beliefs I know basically nothing about, and this is one of them. So
Okay.
I do know very little about this belief, maybe
Mhm.
because in my mind it's hard for me to know what it means. So I'm going to definitely have
Right.
to spend some time on definitions and actually probably one definition. And once
Sure.
I kind of get that straight in my mind, I'd love to ask you questions about it and kind of do this in a collaborative process to see where we end up. I'm just very
Absolutely.
fascinated about
Absolutely.
it.
Okay.
So the belief is you when you reached out to me, you said the belief is non-dualism. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
What
So
is
that
not?
yeah, it comes from Eastern philosophy. Um, Pretty much the way I view it. Um, I guess the claim would be the universe exists, and that's pretty much all that exists. Now I can't state for certainty. I can't make a certain claim. There could be a God out there, I guess, but I don't see any evidence for such things. What I see evidence for is the universe in its totality. Now, that might not seem like much of a claim, but everything that's going on in our experience, everything is just the universe doing its thing. The universe is expanding, you know, atoms form, planets form, suns, stars, galaxies. That's just the universe doing its thing. It's not. Um,
So non-dualism
I,
is the claim, at least the way you're defining it, is the claim that the universe exists and the universe does what
right,
it does.
and there's
Okay.
nothing relative to that. There's nothing. There's no. Um, it's hard. It's hard to know where to jump in and try to put out these other concepts. I haven't really explained this to many people. Most of it.
That's fine.
um, okay.
How is non-dualism
So
different than say materialism?
uh, I would say non-dualism. Well, if we're gonna go from the universe is what exists, then me talking to you is just the universe talking to itself. There's no extra. There's no entities. There's no relative existing objects. There's no relative existing sentient beings or all that. Everything is just the universe, and that's it. There's nothing else.
So are you saying that we can't make distinctions between objects and within the universe?
Well, I say objects within the universe are just the universe as those objects.
Say that
That's
again. That
objects within the universe
yeah.
is just the universe as those objects. Like nothing within the entire evolution of the universe has anything been created that is relative to the universe, that's separate from the universe.
Right. So I,
Right.
I'm trying to follow you. I really am, and I
Sure.
plan to. Um,
Yeah.
and just probably my own limitations here, but
Right.
what is we're we're not making a distinction between the universe and what's within the universe. Is that correct?
Right. There is no distinction. It's just everything is just or we could say everything is just energy matter. Everything that we see is just some, you know, it's just, you know, cars and cats and all objects we see is just some form of energy and matter, and that's just what the universe is. So everything is just that, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Substantively,
Yeah.
the way.
So are we saying that the matter that makes up, let's say, a car is
Mhm.
not fundamentally different than the matter that makes up a human? Is that what we're saying?
Correct.
Are we saying
The
that it's
matter
identical?
identical. Yeah.
The matter is identical. So I think we're getting closer. The matter that
Yeah.
makes up a car, that makes up a person, that makes up anything, that matter is identical. At what level are we saying that matter is identical?
Well, it depends. I mean, if you go all the way down to particle theory, the standard model of physics, these types of things are hard to get at because it's hard to understand these, quantum mechanics and physics themselves.
Yeah, yeah.
When you get down, some people say particles are the most fundamental thing. The muons and the bosons and electrons and all that stuff, photons.
Okay.
You go into quantum mechanics, and it's kind of a different story with quantum field theory, that these things aren't as fundamental as we think. But that's not really what I'm trying to get at.
Okay. Help me.
Say you see a cloud in the sky.
Okay.
Within the cloud, you can see a dog and a bird and a person's face, but you know that this is just vapor water, that these things aren't actually real. There's not really a dog there. There's not really a plane there. There's not really there's not really a face there in the cloud. All it is just a sea of particles. What I'm saying is every object in the universe is just a sea of particles. So
I see.
But
are these, what we see as a planet or a person, are these particles organized differently?
Sure, they could be.
Okay.
I mean, that's basically what complexity is. It's just,
yeah, they're arranged. There might be a base level of whatever that is, and we might not know what it is. But you're saying that they're organized. They're organized, whatever that base. Like, let's say, let's pretend. Just make it easier to talk about. Let's just pretend, as a thought experiment, that the base level is Legos, and you can't get any.
Exactly.
You can't get any finer than Legos for what in this particular universe. And we can organize Legos to make a house. We can organize Legos to make a car, to a person. But in the end, it's Legos.
Exactly.
Okay.
So yeah, you're doing better explaining this than
I. Well, I'm just trying to understand where I think I get a better picture where you're coming from, and
right.
I mean, I think it sounds like that would be supported by science, but I'm not sure. Is it? Is that a scientific view?
I'm not sure that. I mean, some scientists are monists. Some, I'm sure, aren't. I guess it depends on the scientist, really. When scientists say we're all star stuff, I mean, that's essentially what they're saying. That we're all just the same, product of the same essence, really.
Yeah. So basically, there's a base level, and in this case, we'll say Legos, and there's not two base levels. There's not, part of the universe that functions with a base level of Legos, and another that functions with a base level of Lincoln Logs. That it's all one thing that's arranged differently, and how it's arranged differently, we get whatever we get, as long as it obeys the laws of physics.
I would agree with you that there's some kind of base existence that everything else is supported on. But there's a definite psychological aspect to this too, not just a physical reality.
Okay.
And that's probably more the focus of the Eastern philosophy. And that part is saying that even something like subject and object duality, like I am a subject observing you
as an
object, that is just delusion. Because
delusion or illusion?
I prefer delusion, because illusion to me would be like looking at a frog, but it's really a bird or something like that, like an illusionary. Whereas a delusion is looking at a frog and someone thinking that it's a frog that has its own independent existence apart from the universe, instead of just saying that that is the universe as the frog. So you're looking at the same exact thing. It appears the exact same way, but you're just interpreting it different. Instead of it being an illusion where it's almost like, you know, if you take drugs or something, your perception is warped, and so things appear to you that aren't really there, or something like that, or dreaming or something. It's more of a illusion. And
So
the illusion is just,
when we are seeing things as separate, like a person versus a frog,
yeah,
that is a function of a perception of a human and not a function of how the universe is.
yes, because it's looking through the lens of individualism and individuality. That's why we see. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. It's the delay, and I apologize.
Yeah. Yep.
Do my perceptions of objects occur and is within a universe, or is it separate from the universe? My perceptions.
Oh no, it's not separate.
Okay. Right.
So pretty much, it's like here. If you look at your hand right now, you're both subject and object simultaneously. Would you agree?
If I look at my hand, my hand is part of me, but I can also see his hand as a separate thing, like separate from my foot. You're saying, right?
Or more of the subject object, like you are consciously observing yourself. So you both are the subject, which is doing the observing, and you're the object. You are what is being observed simultaneously.
I guess
both the subject and the object.
I guess the way they interpret it is that, I guess what you're telling me is that in a mile high view, I think you're saying that there's really no such thing as the self, because if we're all kind of fundamentally made of the same stuff, and there's nothing special about a human or a planet, we're in a cause and effect universe that every effect has a cause before it, and so that would I see it, and that would have implications in that sense. And I guess you're saying there'd also be no free will, because if we're all just pieces of Legos bumping into each other and organized, and they seem to organize in certain ways and fall apart in different ways, like entropy in some ways, that that is all consistent with your view, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get it. Yeah.
Okay.
To me, that seems a very scientific view. I mean, that's how I see it. I'm sure I'm no physicist, but I'm sure that there are physicists might disagree with me. But it's basically, it's also, I see it as kind of a materialistic view of the world, that there's no special sauce that we're not seeing or knowing that's actually having an impact on what we're doing. There's nothing supernatural here, I guess we're saying.
Right. Correct.
Yeah. Did I described your belief correctly, you think? I mean, I'm trying to.
And then if you kind of extrapolate that from just yourself in your hand being subject object, if you just look around the room, it should be the same thing as subject object in terms of the universe.
Sure.
Being aware of itself.
So so the concept of a self is an artifice, and that that I have no special knowledge or control over myself as I do other people. And it may seem like I do, but I really, when it comes down to it, I don't. And I don't really have any control over what I do or say or my decision. There's no such thing as decisions. There's no such thing
Correct.
really. And I may think I make choices, but there's no such thing as choices. And
Correct.
because if we're all part of the same thing, how can one thing uh, make an independent, influential decision over another thing? Right?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd say there's no free will because there doesn't exist a thing that has a will.
Right. Well,
Right.
you'd have to have a self. Right.
Right. You'd have to have a self to do that. Right.
Right. It make as much sense as saying that a planet has free will. Why would we say that a planet has free will? A
Right.
planet's just functioning within physics, and we're functioning within physics. And so I get it. I get your view. I do. And
Okay.
uh and it's just something I've actually given thought to. I've never really described it as non-dualism because
Mhm.
I've never really thought about that in terms of that concept, or ever really knew what that concept really meant.
Uh-huh.
But I get it. And I think I don't usually tell people this, but I think my beliefs would probably align more closely to yours. I think
Hmm.
it makes I think it makes uh rationally, I think it makes sense. But help me here, because I think we're kind of
Sure.
aligned here. And sometimes it's hard for me to SE a belief where I might agree with. It's much harder actually for me to do
Okay.
that. It's harder for me to do that. So
Yeah.
help me find. There's a few things I'd like to know that
Sure.
if it's not this is not the case, I'd like to know how we could know it's not the case.
Okay.
And also maybe like what kind of things could come along, or what kind of things could we both learn that would
Hmm.
reduce our confidence that this is the case. First of all, regarding that,
Right.
on a scale from 1 to 7, how confident are you this belief is true, do you think?
Um, I don't know. I've always found these questions kind of odd. How do you actually pick the number and then justify the number? I guess I would say if Las Vegas had a betting line, I would bet on it. Um, but 1 through 7, I don't know, maybe a 6, maybe not
Okay.
100% certain, but I would
Okay.
be pretty close.
No, I like
Um,
this. And really, I think my beliefs really on this sort of align with yours. Um, so this is I like doing this, and I like to SE myself too. Um,
well, that's
um,
basically introspection. So,
yeah, right,
um,
right. But I think I'm at a 6. I think I'd be at a 6 too. I'm
okay.
not at a 7 at too many things. So I think a
You're right.
6 is pretty, for me. That's pretty high. Um, and I'm willing to revise my belief if I'm wrong. I'd love to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I have no reason. Right. And so I think you're saying we're on the same page there. So how could we revise our belief if we needed to revise our belief on this? That's the question. How what would what would come along to show us that this is incorrect?
Um, I suppose a god could appear.
Yeah, right. Something
Something
supernatural that
yeah, supernatural.
it
Yeah,
doesn't function within the rules of a universe. And to me, like
correct.
a god character that appeared out of thin air and would violate all the rules of physics, that would seem that would reduce my confidence in the belief, I think.
Hmm. Yeah.
But I'm just saying, could we,
Um,
if that happened, like a god appeared and said, "I'm God," and I would that necessarily violate what we're saying here about non-dualism? Do you think?
depends. Some people think that everything is God, so I guess it would kind of be similar to that if you had that kind of belief, where it would be non-dual in nature. It would be, you know, the God would be everything, I guess.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true.
but a creator God that creates universes and people and
Yeah,
other stuff,
like a
that
personal
would
God.
be,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we're saying that a personal God would violate that concept of non-dualism, mostly because that God would be violating laws of physics as we know those laws of
Hmm.
physics.
And he could create separate things separate from each other and mash them together if you wanted to, I guess.
Yeah.
He could create a universe and a bunch of humans that are separate from the universe and stick them in the universe so they would be independent instead of interdependent.
Yeah, I see.
But
Right. Or
functioning,
if we
still
found like,
functioning in the universe.
yeah, and maybe if we found that there was some other dimension that had some other rules of physics but even then,
Yeah.
I would imagine, I mean, those rules would still have rules in a different dimension. Those rules would still have
Mm-hmm.
rules, and we're still saying that there would be a cause and effect universe for that dimension as well too. I mean, to me, the way that it couldn't that this belief couldn't be true is if we did not live in a cause and effect universe and if free will was not a thing in, by definition, right?
Um,
If we did not live in a cause and effect universe,
hmm.
then I would think this belief wouldn't be true.
Unless you were the only thing that existed, I suppose. Because
You mean
then
like
there would only be you, I guess.
oh, in a sense of like solipsism, that I'm the only thing that exists?
Um, I'm not sure.
I don't know. This is and this is interesting. I really find it hard to, um, I find it, and I'm curious other people would think about this, but I find it much
mhm,
easier to SE other people's beliefs than SE first a belief that someone else holds that I might share.
mhm,
And it's hard to SE just yourself. It's really hard to do that. And
right,
it takes it it's takes practice in my mind to able to, because I only, in the way I think about things, I think about things through my framework. I think about things how I think about things. I think about things
right,
how
right.
I'm used to thinking about things. And sometimes to think about things in a different way, I have to really, if I hold that belief, it's really hard I have to step outside of myself and say, well,
Right.
how can I turn this on its head and see things differently? And with this belief, I have given it some thought. I didn't realize I'd given it some thought but now that you've presented it, I have given it thought.
Mhm,
And the way I see, another way I could see this belief not working is if we're not really understanding quite well, and maybe this is what you're getting at, we're not really understanding the nature of consciousness, what that really is.
okay.
And that's just how I see it, that
Right.
maybe if the base level, maybe like Legos, if the base level was
Right.
some units of consciousness in some way that are fit together, then uh I'm wondering if that could change things. I don't know. I don't know enough
Mhm.
about it. Um, but I find it interesting.
Yeah. I mean,
If you could help, and
that's why.
if you can help me falsify the belief, or what it would take to falsify the belief, I'd love to hear it. I really want to know. I would like to know how to do it.
Yes, that is why I reached out to you because I've been kind of trying SE on myself, and it's it's incredibly difficult to really examine yourself. Yeah. And so I wanted another
Well, this is
another.
great. I'm gonna publish this. I don't I probably publish like 10% of my Zoom calls just because I'm not really good at Zoom, but I think I'm
Yeah.
gonna publish this one because I want to hear what people think about it.
Right.
I'm just not I'm just it's hard to see yourself. It is. I think it's easier when it's like a belief claim, like definitely when it's more of a subjective thing.
Hmm.
But to me, it would take, in my mind, it would take a scientific pursuit, and I'm not up on all the science to do it. I don't know how you go about disproving this, and maybe you can't. Maybe it's something that can't be disproven, and
Hmm.
we would have to accept this as a belief that couldn't be disproven or proven, in
Hmm.
a sense that we could set up a test, I guess, to show it.
Hmm.
I don't know.
Well, in terms of psychology, you can. actually, I would say that most people see themselves as a separate existing thing,
Oh, I
separate
agree.
from everything else around them.
I agree that most people definitely would say there is such a thing as a self in the sense that functions independent of the universe,
Right,
and by meaning that a person can make a decision
right,
uh, in and of itself that doesn't have inputs from other causes. You know, they could just make a independent decision,
right,
independent choice. And I don't see how that.
right,
It's hard for me to see how that can happen, uh, just logically, rationally. I just free will to me is hard for me to see logically and rationally. And I know that a lot of people are going to disagree with me when I say that,
right.
and I don't usually express my views. I don't, especially in an SC conversation. I almost never do, but I'm doing it with
Yeah.
you because we seem to have aligned on the same views here. But I'd love to know if my belief
Uh-huh.
in that is wrong. I'd love to know how I can know it's wrong. I want to know if, because I don't want to have a false belief about this. If it's my belief is false, and there is such a thing as a self, and we actually make choices, and um,
Freezing.
I would like to know that. I really would. And actually, I think I'd rather believe that I make independent choices. I think I'd would I? I don't know if it matters to me actually.